Welcome to the Jump Shots from the Goal Line podcast. I am Jonathan Dugan. I am obviously, talking to one of my best friends in the whole wide world, John Henningsen. John, how the hell are you? How was your 4th of July weekend?
4th of July was awesome. If you're familiar with the Arizona area, I went up north to the Flagstaff, neck of the woods, if you will, and played a little golf. Ate hot dogs, ate hamburger. Well, I should say bratwurst. Just ate too good. Enjoyed the cool weather, golfed a little bit, hung out with some family. It was honestly really relaxing, really quiet, really chill. But exactly what you would kind of hope for the 4th, I think.
Nice, man. How are the courses up there in northern Arizona?
Yeah, so they're nice. I mean, Flagstaff's kind of funky where they truly only have one public course for us mere mortals. The options are slim, but my uncle does own a place up there, so we're able to scoot around. I played with my grandfather, who's 85 and still hitting the golf ball, which is freaking incredible. I mean, like, just the fact that he's doing it at all is amazing. So that was really cool, and you got to kind of cherish those moments. And but it's beautiful, man. Thin air, the ball goes flying all over the place. So if you want to feel strong, like, I don't know if you're Tyler or something like that out there, probably a really good place for you to feel mighty. Just a casual drop. But, if you're looking to feel strong, go hit them in Flagstaff, because that ball just carries forever. So really hard to kind of pick a club, get a feel for it. They got different greens. I won't go into all of it, but an interesting track and definitely a good time. How was your 4th?
It was good, man. I went to a FC Tucson soccer game, obviously here in Tucson. Watched some fireworks with my 2-year-old. She thought that was the coolest thing in the world. She's finally at an age where she actually realizes what's going on, and she was losing her mind with the fireworks. So that was really cool to see. The soccer game was really cool. It was my first time going to a game out there. I'm just kind of getting into soccer the last few months, and it was a good time. Highly recommend it to anybody here in the area for sure to go out, check out a game. Besides that, I smoked some ribs, smoked some chicken wings. So, kind of the same thing, ate well, ordered some crumble cookies. So the weight gain was righteous for sure. So yeah, man, it was a good time. The one question I do have for you is your grandpa, is he classic old man game? Is he all irons?
So, yeah, he'll still hit like his driver off the tee. I mean, everything's obviously right down the middle, right? I mean, this was the guy who, when he was younger, used to really stick it to me. Like in his 60s, had no problem smoking me all over the course, because it seems like every single putt went in. I think he would tell you they don't quite roll in like they used to, but again, man, just for him to be like getting around is pretty incredible. So,
hell yeah, dude.
But yeah, he's down the middle. I mean, no problem finding his ball. I'm the one spraying it all over the course. My uncle's moving into that like 60s game where he's pretty consistent. And I'll say too, just because you brought up soccer, I actually have a cousin that just landed in Portugal today. He's going to try to catch on some of the smaller leagues there. He's basically going over there with a coach who is really high on him. He played in the Dallas area. And so he's going to give it a run and try to see if he can play professionally in Portugal. So Nico, good luck, bud.
Wait a minute. You have family in Dallas, Texas, your favorite city in all of America?
Yeah, there's a reason I know I don't like Dallas. It's not just work trips. Like, I've been and I've never I love my family and they're all great, but yeah, it's not the place to be. But good for him. It's been a nice soccer circuit for him, and he's traveled the country playing and all this stuff. But headed to Portugal, man. So, if we're really lucky and he becomes a star, then we'll have to make a trek out there sometime, since I know you're now becoming a fan of the beautiful game.
Yes, sir. Oh man, if we can do a remote pod from Portugal or anywhere else in Europe for that matter, I'm super, super down. Well, yeah, that's awesome, man. Congrats, Nico. Good luck. I know that the competition is fierce in Europe, but you know what? Go show them what the hell America is made out of, and make some noise for yourself. Besides that, John, what do you got going on this week, man? Anything special?
Yeah, so headed this weekend. So yeah, come back from Friday Tech. I feel like I'm super adventurous, and honestly, I normally never leave my house. But this weekend, headed up to a bachelor party in Las Vegas. I was going to pretend like I was going to go cover Summer League for the pod, but in all reality, these guys probably aren't into basketball nearly as much as I am. So there's maybe one other guy If everything stalls out and drags, maybe I can drag somebody into one, but more than likely it'll be chasing a bunch of Miller Lights and chasing blackjack. So that'll probably be just a guess. That'll probably be the bulk of what goes down. But we'll see. We'll see if we see some NBA folks around and see if we can sneak a picture with somebody so we can throw it on the Instagram or something.
Yeah. Promote the pod while you're out there, man, for sure. And if you're able to get any kind of interview, I will do it remote from Tucson. We can interview some summer league cats. Doubtful at best, obviously, but man, Vegas. I feel like the last time, well, you went to Vegas with your girl for a Rolling Stones concert, which is absolutely awesome. But we went out for my bachelor party almost a year ago. And let me tell you, our dear audience, Mr. John Henningsen is a Vegas guy. All right. This guy, he gets after it when he gets out there. He definitely knows his way around the town, and he's a perfect person to go to Vegas with. I know your buddies don't necessarily share the love of the game that we do, but I know if I know Wayne Sheridan, like I think I do, I know he will find his way to a sports book once or twice to go bet on some summer league. So that's awesome, man.
I'm going with the guy that actually gave me that name, right? So his alias, Patrick Diamond, will be in the presence, hanging out with Wayne. So I guess it's appropriate, right? He's the one who gave me the name. But I do come to life there. That town does speak to me. But you were like, thanks for having me on your trip, because like that was a great time. I mean, I was up there with any Vegas trip I've had. We had a blast. Whether it's a Pac-12 tournament, whether it's a bachelor party, whatever the case may be, whatever the excuse is, if you can get to Vegas and cut it up with your boys, it's always a good time.
Yeah, man. I mean, being a Vegas guy, what would you say some of your must-dos while you're in Vegas for the audience?
Sit at the blackjack table for 12 hours and smoke Miller Lights. That's that's essentially that's the core of my list. I would say also if you can get to the sports book at Ncaa, it's kind of a tough time. Like, I don't know. I mean, look, I can slide into some bets, but I don't know if NBA Summer League and baseball is really going to be my peak. So I don't know how much sportsbook will be on this trip, but I would say too, if you can go to either the old Westgate Sportsbook or the new Circus Sportsbook, if you can get a table there, you just get some seats there and hang out for a while. I know for your, we're definitely not Alabama fans, but we were definitely screaming Roll Tide when the points were looking in our favor week one of last year. So if you can get to a sportsbook, or find a nice seat at a hot blackjack table for, anywhere from 10 to 14 hours, I think that's a good play.
There's nothing better than being at the Circus Sportsbook, placing a bet on Alabama football week one when they're playing nobody. And you thought you placed a certain bet, but it turned out being the wrong bet. And you're just in there yelling "Roll Damn Tide," being from Tucson, Arizona. And then coming to find out that you placed the wrong bet, and it's all okay because you've been chugging Miller Lights for the past 6 hours. Nothing can stop you from winning. But yeah, that was definitely a good time. Speaking of being at a blackjack table for 12 hours, I think we were at on Fremont at a blackjack table, just ripping Miller Lights for at least 11 to 12 hours. So that speaks to me for sure. That's awesome, man. I hope you have a good time. I know I wish I could be in Vegas this weekend. I know I'm due for a Vegas trip with the boys, so maybe we'll have to put some on the calendar.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's we got to get there for football sometime. I mean, we could talk about this for hours because it is that much fun. Like when you get that energy going, and everybody's having a good time, laughing. Even the dealers having a good time. And if you don't know at the sports book and you're not familiar with the language and terminology, get with the guy in your group that does, because they can really help you get through that. Because it's pretty painful when you're right, but you're not. Like that's a tough pill to swallow. But I don't think we're big enough spenders to be. I don't think either of us were gonna lose our shirt or anything there.
No.
But hey, $10, $20, $50, whatever it is that you're betting, man. Like as some of the other folks say, don't unit shame. But hey, a win's a win.
Listen here, man. My $20 bet that I smoked because I was too incoherent to realize what I was doing. I more than made up for it by all the Miller Lite that I got for free on the blackjack table. So
yeah, we did okay at blackjack. We did okay there.
Listen, anytime you can sit at a blackjack table for 12 hours and still win any amount of money, you're winning. All right. You're beating the house. You're having a good time. That's what it's about. A little free tip for anybody that's never been to Vegas before. Just find yourself at a blackjack table, park your ass there, make some fun bets, get a little wild and crazy every hand, and every hand here and there, and just enjoy the free alcohol that they want to give you. That's the time of your life there. Stay away from the clubs, stay away from the shady individuals that'll come up to you promising you a good time. Just, stick close to the cool blackjack dealers that want to call you Mighty Whitey, and you'll have a good time. So
yeah, if someone's really friendly to you on the streets, again, find the person who's most likely been on the streets before and let that person guide you through that experience as well. Basically, keep your most savvy friend in any particular situation with you at all times. And I had a hard time saying particular there, but just head on a swivel, but it's a good time. But they're here to take your money.
One of my favorite memories is our buddy Jin being with us, and he was, a little green to the Vegas lifestyle. And that dude coming up to him and saying, "Hey man, you want to have a good time?" And he goes, "Yeah, I sure do." And you had to step in and be like, "No, man, we're good. We're good."
Yeah, Jin's a real nice guy, and I don't think that's the kind of good time that he was trying to have.
No,
he's a little more wholesome. And though he was a really nice gentleman, he had a different intent.
He had a different agenda, absolutely. But awesome, man. I hope you have a good time. We are going to get, first and foremost, guys, I know last week, a little bit of a rush show because free agency was starting. It was getting hot and heavy, so we had to skip past the sports video game, quote-unquote draft or quote-unquote list. But we do have that prepared for you guys today. I know John and I already swapped our list, and I think we have some pretty good names on the list. I do kind of want to switch it up. I want to list a couple that were in the running, but they're not going to be on the list, even though they're fantastic video games. A couple that I had in mind, and you can speak to this too, John, but one that didn't make my list that was so freaking close was Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. Not 1, because that came out in like 97 or 99, and I was a little too young for it, but Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, man, one of the best soundtracks of all time. And, I think 10, 11-year-old Jonathan thought he could be the world's greatest skater after playing that game. Did you ever get busy with that game?
I played a little bit of Tony Hawk, but was more into like the snowboarding ones. Like I think there was one called 1080, and then there was another. You mentioned one too, yeah, which I think I dabbled with a little bit.
Yeah,
but great games to like. Yeah, you just whether you're skating or you're snowboarding, you just kind of those games are kind of about the music. Like you're just kind of grooving with the music, doing your tricks, and you're just like you get in this weird zone where that's like a really good you're alone playing alone game. So. Luckily when I was in, probably my prime video game years, I normally had a friend. And so like the idea of watching them snowboard and then me snowboard and then like not as appealing, but like those games, if you were left alone, had 6 hours to kill by yourself, like what sweet games. And like, what a vibe.
Absolutely, man. The only other one I could think of that didn't make the list, but got damn close was MLB The Show. And I'm talking about MLB The Show specifically, probably from like MLB The Show 08, 09. I remember being a young buck, like 15, 16. I literally bought a PSP, the PlayStation Portable, literally just so I could play that game. And one of the best baseball games ever, besides one of the ones that did make the list on your end. What an incredible game when it came to just making your guy, getting him through the minors, getting him through the majors, just ripping homers, and just one of the coolest like franchise modes ever. I know you said you played that a little bit. Do you have some memories from that game?
Yeah, that was just slick. That was just like a cut above. That game kind of elevated baseball again to like another level. So yeah, I got good memories. That's another one too, where honestly, yeah, like you said, you can put that in your little player mode. I don't remember what they called it, but you kind of create your guy, you're going through the minors, and that's like something too where, 8 hours of your life just gone.
Yeah, man, the Birmingham Biscuits, I'll always remember them strictly because of MLB The Show. So, yeah, good memories. Do you have any that almost made the list but didn't make the cut?
So I kept like going back and forth. So I'll say that I'll kind of just add and I don't really know like which specific one I would say. There is like NHL 94, which is like the EA Sports version, probably the first like hockey game that I really liked. I think that's the same one they're playing in Swingers, where they're like, oh, make him bleed, make him bleed. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen Swingers, but like, they're going after him. Great hockey games. And then really like up until probably in the same area, like somewhere in the 02 through 08. I don't remember the specific year. Anytime you can just, it's kind of the same thing, man. You get that skate, like you're kind of like, you can kind of play the pretty game with hockey, or you can just literally fight someone every 10 seconds. So half boxing game, half hockey. I'm not a huge hockey guy, but super fun game, and definitely something that was fringe on my list. I would say also Ken Griffey Jr. baseball, played a lot of that. Didn't make the list, but I freaking love Ken Griffey Jr. baseball. Yep. That's probably it for my honorable mentions. Outside of, I also liked NFL Fever. I could name literally every year of all of these games, and I don't think we really put in a racing game either, which I don't think of it in the sports world, but plenty of awesome racing games, Cruising USA, just to name one off the top. But
Need for Speed, yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So there's a lot of good ones. I mean, it's crazy how busy just the sports landscape alone is for video games, and how many of those I poured into hours and hours of my life into these games.
Yep, absolutely, man. So without further ado, do you want to start us off on your first one that did make the list?
Yeah, and in no particular order, really, but I'll kind of go towards probably my more dominant ones last. I'm just go with FIFA, and I would say FIFA from 13 to 15 was pretty prime, and that's another game too where, and probably the way I'm describing it, maybe you can figure out what my lifestyle was like, but that was a game where you could just really cruise, man. You got a feel for it. It had a nice rhythm to it. You're kind of moving that ball back and forth against your friend there. Then you get that big forward pass, that cross, and then FIFA is just awesome. Huge Chelsea guy in FIFA, big Drogba. Shout out to Drogba, Ivory Coast, Chelsea. That was the team that I was rocking with the most. And I could play a friend in FIFA for hours, fighting each other over this, betting over that. FIFA, honestly, you'd probably give me any edition and I'd be fine. But I think that was kind of that 13 to 15 was like prime FIFA years at some point in my life.
Yeah, dude, I would say that FIFA, I wanted to add it to my list, but, we kind of had to go back and forth. I still play it, dude, and my wife hates it. I play FIFA to this day. I can play that game for hours and hours, but I don't think there's any more better of a game to just play in college with your roommates or your dorm mates or what have you, and just sit there and play for hours on end, kind of like you said, just head to head, betting on games. I'm also a big Chelsea guy, so up you Blues. I think, honestly, probably one of the most fun games to play. It's also one of the most, I would say, like one of the best put together games in terms of just like how you can move your player, the moves that you can pull off with the dribbling, the shots, 100%. All that stuff. And then just all the teams make it interesting as well, all the different leagues. And definitely some fond memories of FIFA when I was in college, for sure.
Yeah, that's a game where you like really do, like as you mentioned it, like you feel in total control of every single thing. And I never felt like FIFA was cheating me. Like I knew it was that I released that B button a half a second too late. You know what I mean? It was like, oh, that's me. So I never really felt cheated in FIFA because you really do feel like so in control. And I'm not a soccer guy, really immature as a kid, but so just like it speaks to how good that game is that I could really care less or know who a lot of these guys are. And I still loved it so much. Yeah,
totally, man. With my first pick of my list, it's no surprise. I mentioned it in the last pod. I'm going to go with backyard baseball. Just some real fond memories growing up as a kid. I know that wasn't really your era, but I know people around my age group, 30, 31, 29, whatever, being able to, be the secret weapon of Pablo Sanchez, ripping dingers, being Pete Wheeler, being the speedster out there, Ahmad Khan, another power guy, but then also just being able to play with all your favorite guys from back then, the Mark McGuires, the Nomar Garcia Perez, the Ichiros, just being those guys as kids in a cartoon atmosphere. I put many, many hours into that game, and it definitely was a huge, huge part of my childhood.
This game still means absolutely nothing to me, but I will say since you brought it up, it's kind of like, when you buy a car, then all of a sudden you start seeing all the other people that have the same car and you start noticing it more. Like Pablo Sanchez, all of a sudden I'm seeing him here or there. I'm hearing backyard baseball there and there. So clearly it's out there. It's in the zeitgeist. It's in the world. And somehow I just missed it.
It's definitely a cult classic, bro, of anybody that was born within the 90s. You missed that mark just by a little bit. So totally get why it's not a fond memory of yours. Yeah, a whole decade. But it was an incredible game for people around my age.
I'm with it, man. I was gonna say, I think the amount I'm seeing it speaks volumes as to you're right and I'm wrong on this. But my next one up is going to be, and this is just speaks to the era and how dominant really he was. Tiger Woods, 05. Yep. And again, really any of the Tiger Woods, like any of these games, honestly, like you give me any version of them or iteration of them, I'm probably into it. But that's like really when it was at its peak. You getting over the putt. It's when they first started putting like that haptic feedback or whatever you call it, that thump into the controller, like the of those putts. And still to this day, if I'm out on the golf course and I'm playing well, I'm truly seeing putts in Tiger vision, and there's no other way to describe it. I'm seeing that little line, and I think it gave me a different way to visualize the course. It's I don't know what Tiger's feedback was on that. I don't know if any of that's real. He probably lives in a different world and sees things in a third dimension I'm unaware of. But thanks to Tiger Woods, I feel like I at least have a chance out there.
Yeah, man. And I think it's cool. I think most of us have played that game. And I think it's cool that nowadays you see these young guys on the tour that they can, I think we even talked about it, that they can kind of feel out these courses, even though they haven't played on them as long as some of the vets, because they literally played it on Tiger Woods and they know the layout. They know how the course looks. And I remember reading on Twitter, I don't remember which pro it was, but they specifically said that actually helped them in their day-to-day ability to play on these courses because they played them as children on Tiger Woods. So I think the staying power of that game is absolutely incredible. And Rory McIlroy golf does not even compare. So.
Yeah, it's Tiger Woods golf is the best golf game. I'll say like shout out to Golden Tee since it's probably the first one I ever played and definitely a good little bar game, but it's not anywhere close or near the standard of Tiger Woods golf.
Yeah, no, totally. Golden Tee is great. That would probably be on the list of almost made it because I think anybody that has been in a bar, I remember my dad taking me over to whatever bar had the off-track betting. I would sit there and play Golden Tee for hours while he bet on horse racing. So some fun memories there too. So
hell yeah.
Yeah, shout out Dad, playing his $2 bets.
I'm nothing better than dads just being dads, man. I came up over the weekend. I'll just say this real quick. Like came over the weekend too, started talking to my uncle and blah, blah. And, when they go to the horse track and this and that. And then I have like these memories of my dad taking me to the dog track to like bet greyhounds after they trot him out and like just dadding 101 right there. Yeah. Just I got the boys and we're going to be fine. Like, where are you guys? Oh, we're at the dog track. They're loving it, man. They love dogs.
Yeah, dude. I think back at it and I'm like, dude, I was like a 9-year-old kid leaving my basketball game, going straight to an off-track betting bar filled with cigarette smoke and just guys betting away their paycheck, and I didn't think anything of it.
No, nothing better, man. All you get that nice waitress coming over. You get your chicken tenders. Like she's always sweet on you, right? Like it's great, man. I still to this day like swear that I love bar food for that specific reason. I'm like, what are you craving? And I'm like, I don't know, like an app sampler. Weirdly, I don't know why.
I'm craving a Reuben. I don't know why.
Yeah, that's so great. Shout out to your dad in that one, and a good dude too. He's a good dude, but that's hilarious.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, man. So next up on my list is the NFL Blitz franchise. So obviously, I was introduced to it when it was on N64, where you could tackle people after the whistle, complete debauchery. Jerry Rice was incredible in that game. That had to be back in I don't know, when I played it, probably 2001 or something like that. But then the franchise, after it lost its NFL licensing rights, made their own teams, and you could just get into some real debauchery. Like they would have owners that were just doing scumbag things, and the players would get in trouble for drugs and stuff like that. I mean, just when you think about a franchise that took a sport to an absolute wild level, like NFL Blitz was definitely up there.
NFL Blitz was awesome when that first came out, and that'll maybe that'll feed into my next one here. But like when that first came out, that's the best. I mean, it's simple, right? Like you don't have to, because Madden, like if you're playing Madden, and I'm sure somewhere that'll show up on this list, like you kind of have to know, or at least it benefits you to actually understand coverage, to understand a man beater versus zone coverage. Like that actually is helpful. And I've spent a lot of time playing against other like high school football coaches and stuff who get really into it. NFL Blitz, you can be an idiot. You just hammer those buttons, kill everybody, and if you got fast fingers, you're good to go. It's an awesome game. That's just a straight arcade game brought to your home.
Not a whole lot of skill involved with Blitz, but it was just as much fun, if not more fun, than any Madden that's ever come out. So
felt like a tough field goal kicking game. I feel like its field goals were a little tough, but everything else very simple. Run up the score, make your extra points.
Very fun. So absolutely, man.
And I'll feed that right into, I could flip the order on these a little bit, but I'll feed that right into NBA Jam, because the same thing, right? Like NBA Jam, when it first came out, the only complaint you could have about NBA Jam is it didn't have Charles Barkley as a Suns fan, and it didn't have Michael Jordan. So instead, they made Scottie Pippen the way he sees himself, which, hey, good for Scottie. Like if Scottie's ever feeling bad about himself, which apparently is
all the
363 days a year. Yeah. I hope he takes a break on Christmas, but then it's great because he was the best player in the game. And I remember, you just load up, and I love that version too, by the way, like the tournament edition, when you had to start thinking about subs, already too much, right? Like just give me my two guys, give me Horace Grant with the goggles and Scottie Pippen, and let's ride. Or, you could go with the Trailblazers, Drexler and Porter, and just get shooters. And I mean, who doesn't love, if I could be walking through, whatever. If I was in a foreign country and heard he's on fire, I knew exactly what they were talking about. He slams it in, whatever, any one of those taglines, and it would put a smile on my face to this day.
Dude, I love NBA Jam so much that I have the full arcade version of it in my garage, like an actual arcade machine, NBA Jam 93. And let me tell you, there's no more potent duo than Steve Kerr and Scottie Pippen, or Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman. You can run the table with that. Or Larry Johnson on the Hornets was incredible in that game as well. So yeah, there's some definitely some potent combinations you can get into on that game. And man, the staying power of that game is incredible.
Larry Johnson doesn't get talked about enough. He was so important to people my age. And I feel like he just, obviously had his injury problems, became a Knick, and maybe people remember him there. But Larry Johnson, his grandmama on the Hornets with those Converse Reactor shoes.
Dude, he was in Space Jam.
He was so important. Yeah. We forget about Larry Johnson way too much. I mean, Running Rebels, all that, but yeah, I totally get it. I mean, glad you have that. I can't believe I still haven't played that in your garage yet, but I feel bad now that I took it. But you also, it sounds like a tournament edition, which
I do.
Again, I'm going with the original. I prefer the original. Not that there's anything wrong with tournament edition. Okay, all right,
it has both, bro. You can get wild with it.
Okay, I just want to for me, just give me the original. Although tournament edition was, it's the same game.
Yeah, for sure, man. Perfect. So the next one I have on my list would be Madden 04. 04 specifically because Michael Vick was a cheat code in that game. And if you had the Falcons, you were going to win the game no matter what, because there was nothing you could absolutely do to stop Michael Vick. The only other thing I would say is Madden 05 with Ray Lewis on the cover. This isn't a homer pick, strictly because they introduced the hit stick, and that changed football games forever. So those two Maddens are definitely on my list. Just absolutely incredible games. Same thing, right? Many days with the boys in high school, college, just ripping it up on those games and just having Michael Vick be a god.
Yeah, there's no doubt that's the best one. And for me, I'm a left-handed guy, watched Michael Vick in the Florida State National Championship game, literally watched that game and my head exploded. I was like, wait, a quarterback can do this? I have never seen anything like this. And then to be able to actualize that, or at least, with my fingers, be able to even try to do that, to replicate it. Like, there was nothing better. That was absolute peak Madden in my eyes as well. There's a million different versions. We all hate QB vision. Like, please don't ever do that stuff again. But yeah, that's the best one, man. And obviously Madden has been king for like a long, long time. Although I think there's arguments to be made. There's some other really good football games out there. Madden's the staple, and we've all probably logged 10 billion hours playing Madden.
Yep, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
So we're kind of simpatico on these. So then my jump would be I'm going to go 10 years forward, but I'm going to do NCAA football 14. So then we got, what do they call him? Shoelaces? Laces? What was his name? Denard Robinson?
Yeah, Shoelace
Robinson on the cover. And to me, I like, as much as I love Madden, NCAA football was always the better counterpart to me, just because you simply get 3 times as many teams. You get the option, as the years go on and on and on, you get RPO, and you have all this innovation, and you can have all these different offenses, and you can get all these different teams, and you're picking teams that you have no idea, but I want to air raid, so I'm going to throw to 5 wide receivers, and you always have that guy that just drops back 30 yards and throws to 5 wide receivers the entire game, and you're stressed out as a safety. Or then you go and play your next buddy, and he's running option on you. So the best part of NCAA football to me is you get everything you get with Madden, but then you get like incredible diversity in all these offenses and all the different styles of play, and everything you love about college football is in that game. And there's nothing better than, to me, instead of franchise mode, now you're out there on the recruiting trail, and you got to keep your donors happy. And so to me, NCAA football actually is my preferred. But certainly I spent a million hours playing both. And but yeah, NCAA football to me always reigned king over Madden, actually.
I think NCAA football 14 was probably one of my all-time favorite games, strictly because of the recruiting that you could do. You could literally take a no-name team and just eventually get them to recruit 5-star talent. Like, before like Coastal Carolina was a real team, like you could make them an absolute superpower within college football. And there was just nothing better. And then the fact that you could download the rosters that had the players' actual names in it, that was also super, super dope. And I think another thing too, the staying power of that game rings really high, right? Like there's still people that will buy that game and like play it like, 10 years or 8 years later. And the fact that Barstool did a whole thing with Big Cat and he literally, made Coach Dukes and like took him all the way, and like that garnered so much viewership. Like that should tell you just how many people love that game.
It's king, man. And like, I mean, it's definitely arguably the best. Yeah, it's just the best.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. My next game, actually the next 2 games kind of speak to kind of the era that I was brought up in. When you think of, early 2000s basketball, you think of like the baggy jeans, the do-rags, the chains, all that stuff. So it's, of course, going to be on my list, NBA Street Volume 2. It's the one where they had 3 versions of Michael Jordan. They had rookie Michael Jordan. They had like 1992 Michael Jordan. And then they had like, regular Michael Jordan. And then they also had like Julius Erving, all these different players, and you would create your own guy, and it was 3-on-3 street basketball with all the crazy ass moves and like a sick playlist that had like Nate Dogg on it and all that stuff. I remember being a kid when that game came out in like 2003. I was like 12, and I thought it was like the coolest game ever, and just one of the most fun basketball games of all time.
I definitely dabbled with this game. Nate Dogg is definitely speaking directly to my heart. And this is definitely a game I played a little bit. Definitely not as closely connected to it as you are, but I do remember all of it. And I think whether you were playing any of the street ball games or had even like some of the normal games that had like that one-on-one street ball element, like that's always fun, right? Like everybody wants to just play one-on-one. I mean, like it's nice to move the ball around and play structured basketball, but when you're playing a video game, it is definitely just as fun to just get after it in that way. And I mean, if you put, Nate Dogg on it, you know it's a hit. I mean, that's what Nate Dogg does.
Dude, they had one of the best playlists of all time. It had like Pete Rock on there. I actually went on Spotify and recreated it, the the soundtrack, and I got like,
Send that to me.
yeah, I got like hundreds of people that subscribe to it. So like, for somebody like myself who cares, like for people to actually subscribe to that should tell you it was an incredible
Yeah,
playlist.
yeah. Send me that playlist because I'm sure I'm more. I bet I'm more into the playlist than the game, to be honest with you. But yeah, send the playlist. I'll throw it on the next time we're playing some golf.
Yeah, dude, totally awesome.
My last one, and I think it's really just my last one because we had talked about it before, and this is my rival to your backyard baseball is MVP Baseball '05. It's the one with Manny Ramirez. It's the one we talked about with John Dowd, who AKA Barry Bonds. Some random white guy who just mashes and is the best player in the game. MVP Baseball. That is 100%. Coming home from whatever bar shift in college, me and my buddies, we fire up MVP Baseball. We love the game so much. We'd be like rotating innings. We'd have four of us, and we'd be like, all right, I have the 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. You take 2, 4, 6, 8. We're drinking beers, playing the game. We got music going. We just always laugh because you could build your own teams, and we'd be using Bronson Arroyo as a closer, and Bronson Arroyo had some music that he put out, like a little hit single, like he did some covers of some songs. We'd play our own closing songs to have Bronson Arroyo come in to shut it down and throw some breaking balls. Me and my boy Brett were locking the other roommates down. So MVP Baseball to me, just very near and dear to my heart, but like a very legit, super fun baseball game, like really as good as it gets. I mean, the show definitely took it to another level, but MVP Baseball is that perfect. It looks real. It feels real. It's definitely good enough, but like I don't have to get multiple joysticks involved. I'm not super confused. It's just kind of locate that fastball and swing. MVP Baseball, my favorite baseball game of all time, and definitely something that created a lot of memories for me and my college roomies.
Yeah, dude, I played many a game on MVP Baseball '05 with Manny Ramirez on the front. It was definitely fun to play as like the Boston Red Sox. They had Dropkick Murphys. We went over it, a couple weeks ago, but definitely probably one of the best baseball games ever. I said MLB The Show earlier, but MVP Baseball might be the game when it comes to baseball. Just the gameplay, everything. I did the same thing, dude. Just like swapping innings and stuff like that. Like it's an incredible game.
No Perfect. Doubt. What's your last one here?
My last one, I guarantee you probably never played it, but it's similar to NBA Street Volume 2. My buddy Adam and I used to play this for hours and hours and hours in 2004, but it was NBA Ballers. It had Stephon Marbury on the front. Their whole theme song was incredible. Every time you picked to play Stephon Marbury, they would go Starbury. And it was like so cool. It was the epitome of 2004 NBA lifestyle. You made a guy. It was one-on-one basketball. You were playing against guys like Kobe, Kevin Garnett, Kenyon Martin, Lamar Odom, LeBron, all the stars from 2004. And basically every time you got past somebody, you got more like, more attributes, obviously, but you also got like more bling. You got mansions, you got cars. It was the epitome of what the NBA was in 2004.
Yeah, again, this is not one that, I got nothing, but I'm glad you loved it. It sounds like it checks the box. I love Starbury. I love this era of basketball. I don't know how I'm missing some of these, but I'm glad you and Adam are having a good and big episode for name drops for all of our friends, right?
Yeah,
because you can't play video games without friends. Like you can't play them without friends. So like at least for me, sure I could play on my own a little bit, but I'm still a social guy, and for me, if I didn't have a friend to play, like it just wasn't the same. Like I like to do those franchise stuff, and I like some of those other modes, and you got to get your work in so you're ready when your boy comes over. But yeah, I love it because you can just tell that these memories are, I don't know, they're very real for me, and I'm sure they're very real for you.
Yeah.
Those things that you connect with on a game with a friend is just, it's the good stuff, man. It's the stuff that's hard to find as you get a little older.
Let me tell you, dude, this was one of those games because it was 1-on-1 to like 21 where like you would take one turn, you would get your ass kicked by like, Manu Ginobili, and then, your buddy would take the next like shot trying to like beat him. And let me tell you, Peja Stojakovic was the most overpowered player in the world. He would hit every shot ever, and he was incredibly hard to beat. But yeah, that game I will always have fond memories of. Also a fire soundtrack to that one as well.
Which game do you think on your list you were most likely to, and I'm not saying you did, but most likely to like throw your controller?
Oh, probably NBA Ballers, dude. Like
NBA, yeah, okay.
because it's one-on-one, dude, and like, there's just some OP players on there like Stojakovic, like Kobe. I remember like Tim Duncan being just an absolute like hog. Like there'd be times where you and your buddy would go 7-8 times and not beat the guy. And then all of a sudden you hit a bullshit layup and you win, and you literally lose your marbles because it like you think you just conquered the world. So I
would call it a bullshit layup. It just tells you exactly how you feel. Because it happened 20 years ago, and you're still like, that bullshit layup that Adam made, like,
dude, left. Yeah, you're like, dude, how did my guy not do that? Like, what the hell? Like, and that game, like, it was the perfect like essence of 2004, and I wish I could still play that game.
Yeah, well, maybe we can get the boys all together sometime. Highly doubtful, but we could try. We could certainly try. For me, it's got to be NCAA football. I mean, just to brand it, like we just used to play that one. And I just remember some like gnarly bets, and like you have some friends that are weaker in the group, and then they get a little confident, or like they get up 7-0, maybe even 14-0 and then it's like, oh, you know what the bet should be, and then the next thing you know, they're yucking in a trash can or something because they had to pay the piper, because sure enough, here comes the 48-0 run that we all knew was coming.
Oh yeah,
some real dark days, and some real great days playing some NCAA football.
Yeah, man. I think we can definitely agree that our childhood had some absolute bangers of NBA, or not NBA, but just sports games that have definitely molded us as adults. And man, now I just want to go pick up the sticks and go play some games. But
for sure.
Awesome, man. So let's jump into, some actual sports, some real stuff going on. NBA free agency, NBA off season. I know probably the first thing we want to talk about is this wild Rudy Gobert trade to the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Utah Jazz getting just a boatload of picks and some good young players, and Pat Bev on there as well. What were your thoughts on that trade?
My first and only thought initially was that I thought Pat Bev was a future Hall of Famer, and I couldn't believe the load that had to get traded to move Pat Bev. One player that he gets moved with 47 assets. I was just really happy that he got treated, as a absolute nothing in that trade. So that was my initial made me happy. But then after that, it seemed like if you watched it, like I was watching it relatively live as it came from like Woj and Shams, and it was just like, oh, and this, and this piece. Because at first I thought it was just a couple players and a couple picks, and I'm like, okay, like these aren't big name players, and a lot of it's just kind of making the money work from the player side. Pat Bev, Beasley, Vanderbilt, like that was kind of really more a money thing. But then the first round pick, Walker Kessler, and then 4 picks, and then another. I mean, just the amount of assets that went for Rudy Gobert was mind boggling. And then knowing the potential Kevin Durant stuff looming, I was just mad at the Timberwolves for again being what feels like an inept franchise, always doing the weirdest, most ridiculous things. Maybe the fit works. I don't know. But it just feels like a really, really, really hefty load for a guy that, I mean, hey, he's a nice piece. But if you're telling me now that, DeAndre Ayton's been devalued a little bit, or this other center's, I don't know, do we really even care about a center? All of this to be moved for the Stifle Tower, who certainly is an interesting guy, and I don't think he's a bad player by any means, just felt really one-sided, and it felt like Danny Ainge is just a guy, when he calls, you just shouldn't pick up the phone.
Yeah, man. Before we get too far off the whole Pat Bev thing, I do want to say 2 things, right? The fact that he said to Steph Curry, the last 5 years were yours, but the next 5 years are mine, and he has now been traded 5 times since he has said that is hilarious, number one. And then number two, the simple fact that he went on record on First Take saying, the Suns, like, they didn't have Chris Paul's back when I pushed him in the back, but, the Timberwolves have my back. And then they trade him for Rudy Gobert, who, I just wanted to point those two things out. I think it's hilarious. But
I love that you brought facts to the argument of me simply just being petty. Thank you.
Yeah, that's why I'm here for, so anyway, yeah, dude, I agree with you. Really, really hefty price. Ford picks and Walker Kessler is insane. The fit is definitely suspect. Now you have 2 bigs. Rudy Gobert cannot score for himself. They don't have a point guard that can really feed it to him. Now you're going to have Cat defending theoretically on the perimeter because most teams go small ball. That's going to be a nightmare. And then on offense, you have 2 guys that work out of the paint quite a bit. Now Cat can shoot the 3 and shoot it well, but most of his stuff comes off post-ups. So it's just super, super odd fit, and it's all just so Cat doesn't have to play the 5. I have some real Anthony Davis vibes coming from Cat. So really weird trade.
Yeah, I got a lot of questions about the way this is put together. And the thing is, right, like as Minnesota started to have some success, I think that they found most of their success with Cat at the 5 just because it makes him versatile, right? And they still have some length. Even though he's not a great defender, he still gives him rebounding and some length. And they're playing 5. They're playing 5 out, and Cat's a part of that. And now you're kind of taking away the thing that they did best. Then you have the awkwardness of Anthony Edwards talking about how Gobert put no fear in him, and that Porzingis was really someone that, like, now that guy's tough. Yep. God, it's just tough. And I get it. I think it's going to make them a good regular season team. Like, right, I think they're going to win games. I think all the questions become, what really happens when they get into the postseason. But we see this all the time. Like the regular season now is like a completely different game than the postseason. And just because you win 55 games, which I think they might do, right? Like they might win a bunch of games, and there'll be probably plenty of articles written about how this worked. But we don't know how this works until, they go up against the Clippers and they go 5 small and spread you out and start playing matchup games. And whether it's Cat, whether it's Gobert, we've seen both of them get danced off the floor by smaller guys. And I mean, unless you can make them pay, it's very awkward. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think it's a great move by Utah. It looks like they loaded up on a bunch of pieces, got off a giant contract that extends to 26, 27, where Gobert's making like 46, 47 mil, which, it's all funny money, but still, I mean, that's a wild trade, and it just feels very Minnesota to me.
Well, let's talk about Utah, right? Because now that they don't have Gobert there, and they don't have a whole lot else, they traded Royce O'Neal to the Nets, which was also a weird trade for the Nets, at least. Now it's just Donovan Mitchell there. They have publicly said that they plan on just moving forward with Donovan Mitchell. But if you're Donovan Mitchell, like, you don't have a whole lot of help around you anymore, right? Like, not that Gobert was this great offensive player, but he was another guy that, like, could do a lot of different things on the defensive side. You have Mike Conley, who's old and really showed his age in the playoffs and towards the end of the season. I just don't know how this team is any better. Like, Malik Beasley can be good when he's on the court. And then, like, Walker Kessler could be like a decent, rookie center for them, but they're definitely not going to be anywhere near as good, especially they lost their coach as well. So who knows? Well, maybe we'll see Donovan Mitchell be moved as well, and they'll just go full rebuild mode.
Do you have, I guess really the question is, because I think we're both in the same mindset of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that we don't know, like, right? Is this saying they're gonna blow everything up, or are they just scaling it back to rebuild around Mitchell? So I guess the question is, if I'm asking you, do you think you would keep Mitchell and try to build around that? Like, how comfortable do you feel with Mitchell being the centerpiece, or at least like one of those, maybe you think of him as the second or third guy, and then how do you start to, because they're not going to sign free agents. I mean, that's the problem with Utah, right? They're probably not going to get a big free agent. So do you just go full tankathon and try to see if you can get on the Victor sweepstakes or any of the other upcoming drafts, just staying in that lottery and continuing to draft, or do you think you keep Mitchell? You can maybe still be bad enough to get into a lottery situation. I'm not sure what the direction I would go, but my guess would be that Danny Ainge is definitely going to say one thing, but if the right deal shows up, he's definitely not afraid to make it. So I feel like he's going to be in Utah unless he really gets a deal, though, and gets a call where, hey, this is an offer we can't refuse, in which case he has, the same lottery pick haul that Oklahoma City does, and he just waits and picks and prods.
Yeah, man, I don't know. I mean, I think really all we could really maybe see would be like if this whole KD saga, you could maybe see like Donovan being included in a trade somewhere for that in like a 3 or 4 team trade. And then I know that they're very interested in Ayton. So maybe you see like Walker Kessler get moved again with Donovan Mitchell. I'm not sure. It's definitely a funny situation. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense on paper yet, but we're at the stage of the game right now where we're definitely probably, 1, 2, 3, 4 big moves away from really seeing the full picture for these teams anyway. So.
For sure. Unfortunately, Katie's holding up everything. I mean, that's really the reality, right? Like, no matter how we look at the landscape of any of these teams right now, everything gives you the Windhurst pointy fingers vibes of, does this mean something else? Or is this just a move and then they're set? Because, like, right, we have heard the DA to Utah rumors. We've heard DA to Indiana rumors. And we don't even know if those are really the real moves or if that's like a move to beget another move. So it's a very confusing landscape right now, and I think nobody really knows. I think if I'm Utah, I'm pretty happy to build around Donovan Mitchell. Like, I think it's kind of one of those situations where they're in a good position where he's a really nice player, and if your team's not that great, then you can go draft and draft and draft and hope you hit on a couple. Ainge has proven he can do it in the past. But if you get a really good deal on him, I also think he's not like one of those untouchable guys. I don't think he's a true top 10 guy, you know what I mean? At least like where it stands today. But as I mentioned, it's kind of tough if you're Utah. It's when you have those guys that are even top 25, arguably wherever you put Mitchell, you kind of want to hang on to him, especially when you're talking about one of those wings.
Yeah, and then obviously Mitchell's contract does prohibit them from doing a number of different moves that have been, spoken about on Twitter because he's on that rookie scale max contract. So, even trying to make a move for Ben Simmons, you can't pull him to Utah. You can't put Mitchell in Brooklyn if they're both there together. You can't move him to Miami if Bam is there because of the same rule. So, yeah, more than likely, he's probably going to stay put where he's at. And you know what? You do have to remember, too, that Dwayne Wade is part of that ownership group. And Dwayne Wade, he kind of did it not really by himself, but he was such a huge part of the Miami Heat that, he can probably guide Donovan Mitchell to leading a team.
Agreed.
So other than that, I mean, we mentioned the KD saga, how it's definitely at a standstill. The Suns are still betting favorites, but the Toronto Raptors keep making moves on the Vegas odds more and more. Everything I'm hearing, Shams has come out and said it. Windhorse has come out and said it, that the Suns are absolutely, without a doubt, where Kevin Durant wants to be. The Nets are not enamored with the trade proposals so far from the Suns, even though they include just absolutely insane amounts of player movement and draft pick compensation. I think I saw one trade that the Nets rebuffed, and this is obviously, it's not coming from any of the verified sources, but I think it was like Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, DeAndre Ayton, Cam Payne, and like 4 draft picks, and they still said that wasn't enough. And then you keep hearing, that the Nets want this to be the biggest trade ever, so they're going to have to loop in multiple teams. And then you also hear, because KD only wants to go to Phoenix, trade proposals like the ones the Raptors have been linked to with Scotty Barnes and Pascal, that that's not even enough to get the job done. So we really are just a standstill here. And I remember hearing too on Twitter, or one of them, that most of these big trades, I think it was actually Shams that said it on Pat McAfee's show, that most of these big trades take 2 or 3 months to happen. And that's why you see a lot of these trades happen maybe a month into free agency. But with KD requesting a trade, the day of free agency, this might linger on until right before camp.
It's a mess, man. I mean, I think everybody, if you're an NBA fan, it's testing your patience a little bit, right? I think you can just kind of see it. And, we're always talking Twitter, but you see it, it's kind of the rumor of this, it's the rumor of that. And then everything in the comments is total chaos. Everybody wanted to go this way or that way. Avery Johnson came out to back Shams, and some of the other guys you mentioned that, it sounds like from KD's camp, it's Suns. I want to play with Devin Booker. I want to be a Phoenix Sun. Yeah. Obviously, like, he's kind of that immovable force for unstoppable object, or whatever that whole thing is. Like, you basically have a pissed off Nets owner who's been embarrassed and probably doesn't want to get bullied anymore. But yep. KD holding a ton of power because he is the megastar that he is, saying, hey, this is where I want to go. And if you try to send me anywhere else, he could potentially be a problem. Or, how excited are you if you're Toronto to trade for him, move some really big assets, because apparently the Nets need some really big assets. This is really tough, man. And then if you look at it from the Suns perspective, I mean, there's a part of me that says, hey, if you're a Suns fan, like, you just got to accept that you're going to kind of gut your roster. But at the same time, the guy's 33. He's saying he wants out. So there's definitely some leverage. So I think you're just seeing kind of this cat and mouse game between both franchises, everything coming from agents, business partners. It's a leak a minute in some direction to just push and pull, the leverage. So it's an interesting thing to see how it's going to play out, but it sounds like there maybe is a little bit more movement on the DA side. So if Ayton, eventually, which has been interesting too, right? We spent all this time talking about Ayton and what we do with him, whether he's a sign and trade, whether he's a max guy, how do you deal with him? And it's been just super quiet on the Ayton front.
Yeah, like, which that leads you to believe that he's definitely going to be included in any and all KD trades, right? I mean, that's what you got to think.
Yes. Yeah, and so now we're back to this, some of the trade partners we were talking about initially, right? So I would step fast on, hey, like, he's got to be a part of a KD deal or something big, otherwise I want to bring him back. And then now you're kind of hearing that, well, there's going to be some movement on the KD side, so maybe the Raptors or the Pacers get involved. Those are some teams that have been, kind of put out there that might be interested, and but we don't know what those packages look like. And are those a move that then ultimately makes the KD move possible, or is that just something where now Ayton's team is saying, like, hey, we got to do something. We want to land somewhere. We want to know where our home is, and they're beginning to push for a move. So, man, this is
it's a sticky situation for sure.
Yeah, man. Yeah, like, I'm not getting paid enough money to stress over this much, but I'm looking at my phone every, I'm not looking at it every 8 seconds, but I mean, I was giving you guys a hard time driving back from Flagstaff, and, you guys send a message in one of our group chats, and I'm like, if this isn't about KD, man, like, seriously, like, just don't text me. Like, I'm driving, like, I've got, I'm like, you're just texting me about some nonsense. I'm like, haha, funny joke. I'm like, this is serious right now, guys. I need to know where KD's going. And so, they're going to have to pay me more money to get involved in the intricacies of this. But I have no idea where this is going. I'm at a complete loss for any and all things free agency right now. Every tea leaf is something, but seems to me nothing.
Well, and it's a couple of things, right? Like, the Nets signing TJ Warren is kind of an odd move because it's like, well, if you guys are about to trade your star players, why are you picking up a role player, right? So that was odd. And then John Gambadoro, who's a big sports radio host here in the Valley, he's actually tweeted out tonight that you could be starting to see some movement on the Ayton front, with Indiana and Toronto having the cap space necessary to do it. And it's like, well, that's the Suns' worst nightmare, is if he accepts a qualifying offer, and then you either really have to include that team in a multiple trade thing for Kevin Durant, or you just have to match it, and now you're stuck with Ayton. I mean, stuck is a bad word, but if you're trying to get KD, then you are stuck with Ayton. Or like it's just so sticky, and I think it's just definitely put up or shut up time for the Nets. Like, you're not going to win this battle. Like, he doesn't want to be there. Kyrie doesn't want to be there. Joe Tsai, like you said, is just an angry owner that like doesn't want to be put into a corner. Well, like, you know what? Like, this is NBA ownership. Like, when you have a guy like Kevin Durant, he's able to dictate where he's going to play, even when he has 4 years left on his contract. And like, if you have a team that he absolutely wants to be part of, they have a good trade offer, you're getting a lot of talent back and draft picks. And because you want to be an angry owner, you're going to screw it up because their star player that's supposed to be part of this trade is going to go sign a qualifying offer with a team that can't be really involved in said, 3-team, 4-team trade because they don't have the prospects that you want. Well, then you're going to shoot yourself in the foot and you're going to ruin things for Kevin Durant, yourself, for the Suns, for whoever, and then you're just going to look like an idiot with egg on your face.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. I mean, I wish we could provide more insight, but it's just all purely speculative, and
Yep.
I mean, all we can say is, continue to follow, Flex from Jersey. Maybe he knows, maybe he doesn't, right? He was the one kind of early in on this that said, hey, this is a possibility out there, big star looming. Ultimately, KD was looming, but we still don't know. And so whether it's reporting from Gambadoro, who, is pretty tight with Suns ownership, you get some leak information there. Then you get Flex, who seems to be more Durant camp. But then, then you got the Toronto stuff, and how are they involved? And, how do the Pacers fit into this? Does Donovan Mitchell come into this? Is this guy up, and it goes on and on. And as we mentioned, the Simmons deals, and then like, man, these rookie extensions are like the crux of that. They're really, I think without that, I feel like this deal might be done, honestly. They
got to change the next CBA for sure, because it's just a stupid rule.
Yeah, I feel like ownership was trying to keep some sort of leverage there, but now it's
level
just
of parity.
Yeah, but it just created this weird thing where all these, like, if Donovan Mitchell and Bam, you're like, why shouldn't they be able to be on the same team? Or what? Because it's weird. I guess it's benefiting the Suns in some way, you could argue, but
sure.
Regardless of like where you sit on it, it's just weird because there is all these guys that for whatever reason can't be on the same team, and if the money works or if the compensation feels right for a team, then like why aren't they able to move these pieces and make a trade? So
I think they should at least change it to where like if somebody gets traded on their rookie scale extension, like a Ben Simmons. Like that whole rule of, okay, well then he can't be part of another max rookie scale contract. Like that should go out the window. Like it's not the original team that signed him to it.
Right.
I think that makes sense. So like, I don't know, you definitely got to do some tinkering with the CBA on this next round.
It's a mess. And honestly, yeah, I honestly have nothing else on KD other than, if you're a Suns fan, cross your fingers. If you're a Raptors fan, you're probably doing the same thing. If you're a Nets fan, I honestly I can't imagine you really want to bring these guys back. Kyrie's a whole nother mess that the Nets are dealing with. And we mentioned this on the last podcast. I think the Nets have a chance to build something nice. Like if they really took back the pieces that have all been talked about really from any of these offers, and then you're loading up on first round picks on top of that, it's not like they don't have a roster. It's still potentially a playoff roster in the East. And if it's not, then shoot, jump into the lottery with all those picks,
Yep.
What's to be afraid of? So, we're just stuck in between a rock and a hard place until someone flinches here.
Yep, and it's all a free agency, like you said. It's kind of at a standstill until something like this happens. So I'm sure a lot of the teams are pretty sick of the situation. So hopefully we get some good news while you're in Vegas and you can celebrate like any good fan of any team would with just copious amounts of Miller Lite.
We'll be doing that for sure.
Perfect. So moving on to some NFL news, Baker Mayfield is finally free. The shackles have been lifted. He is no longer in Deshaun Watson's pervert shadow. He is now a part of the Carolina Panthers. He got moved for a conditional fifth, so the Browns may not even get anything, but they're still on the hook for a lot of his salary. They
Just
will
half.
now. yeah, they will now be paying for a quarterback that they no longer have and potentially a quarterback that they can no longer play. So typical Browns things. But, just sticking on the Baker train, I don't want to focus too much on the Browns because we could be laughing at them for hours and days, whatever. But the Panthers now have two of the top 5 players and two of the top quarterbacks drafted from the same draft class in the same quarterback room. What are your thoughts on that, John?
Yeah, that this is why it's tough drafting quarterbacks. And if you leave it to the Browns in particular, here you go. But yeah, it's an interesting move. I think I don't know. I do think it's a place that since they do have what I feel like is a system that probably fits Baker pretty well. With Matt Rule, I feel like he'll understand how to deploy Baker, and Baker probably will understand some of his language a little bit, since I think they come from a similar type of offensive background. And maybe I'm making assumptions that are unfair, but just from my eyes watching those two, watching his teams play and understanding kind of what Baker likes to do, I think it's a good fit in terms of maybe it gives them a fair or fairer shake for Baker. So for that reason, I'm happy he gets another go at it. I mean, I don't hate the guy by any means. I know we've spent a lot of time picking on him and kind of joking at him, but I mean, part of that's just him being a Brown and talking way too much for being a Brown. Maybe he quietly can put something together in Carolina. I mean, obviously it's a low risk situation for them. They're just taking on half the salary, moving, basically a nothing trade asset, and they can give it a run. And Matt Rule probably wants to be out of there, so maybe Baker can solidify the deal for him. It feels like a very nothing move, but to your point, it's really interesting because it is still an NFL quarterback, a guy who's been starting caliber, and now you do have two. Isn't it two of the top 3? Because didn't Darnold go 3? Or
yeah,
they have literally 2 of the top 3 picks. I mean, I think you said 5, but it's whatever it is. 2 of the top picks in the draft,
top 2
both
quarterbacks.
have basically. Yeah, and literally have shown nothing, and I don't know. I would guess you probably get continued the same, but it's always interesting when an NFL quarterback moves, and certainly Baker's been a guy that's on every third commercial. If you're watching Red Zone, so he's of interest. He's out there. He's a name we talk about all the time in here because he's a bit of a lightning rod because he talks, but we'll see. I don't see it working out. I think Carolina's going to be much of the same, and they'll be looking for a new coach and still searching for a quarterback. But, if you can get a guy who's been starting level caliber and you can get him for virtually nothing, you have to take that shot. So I think it's a smart move, a wise move, as good as what they can do at this given moment, and why not take a flyer?
Well, at the end of the day, him and Darnold only have one more year left on their contracts. So, yeah, you kind of have to let it fly. I think it's a lot less pressure for Baker because, going to Cleveland and being the savior there, we trash on him, like you said, but he did get them to a playoffs, got them their first playoff win in Lord knows how long. So, good on him for that. But now he goes to a place where there's not a whole lot of pressure except for your head coach maybe being fired at any moment. But that's not so much his problem. But yeah, maybe he goes out there. He does play Cleveland week 1. So I will have my red zone definitely on that day, just seeing if he's slinging against his own team, his old team, just getting some revenge there. I think that's an interesting game, as well as obviously your favorite player, Russell Wilson, playing the Seahawks week 1. So some fireworks in the first week of the season. But I think it's pretty funny too. Another thing we can kind of hit on, the fact that when this was a rumor floated around in April, Robbie Anderson commented on an Instagram post putting no when it came to Baker Mayfield being his quarterback. And now that is exactly who's going to be slinging him the rock, because I guarantee he will beat out Sam Darnold, because Sam Darnold is awful. So, just a weird situation, but at least my man is out of Cleveland and, doesn't have to have the awkward conversation when Deshaun Watson inevitably gets suspended for a year or more. And they come to him saying, hey, we need you to play some games.
And who are we on to for the Browns now? Jacoby? Is that right?
Yep. Jacoby Brissett is going to probably be their week 1 quarterback. So good luck, Cleveland. And I'm so happy for all the players like Jadeveon Clowney that said, hey, I came back to Cleveland because I wanted to play with Deshaun, and now more than likely he is not going to play there, maybe ever. So, good on you guys for choosing some great teams.
Yeah, it's just more of the same with a lot of these franchises, unfortunately. And like, if you're a Panthers fan or Browns fan, I'm sorry, but I do think from the Panthers side, like you said, I think it's a good chance for him. And you're right, it's not, Matt Rule being, on death's door really isn't his problem. And at worst, maybe he has a solid season. And look, Baker's going to be around. He's a solid player. That's the thing. He's a starting quarterback in the NFL. I don't think really that's the question about him. It's just really about, can he take a team to the next level? And as you mentioned, he got a team to the playoffs. He got the Browns to the playoffs. You can't take that away from him. Not a lot of quarterbacks can say that. But you're right. From the wide receiver room, it's hilarious. From the perspective of the Browns are now to Jacoby Brissett, that's hilarious. So I'm just glad these teams are out there the same way I'm sure Danny Ainge is excited the Timberwolves still exist. It's really great. If you're a fan of all these other teams, right? All you need is 5 or 6 of these other franchises to be out there to make these bad, dumb trades with you, and you'll always have a job. So, if you're if you're in the AFC, like our teams are, you have to be happy the Browns exist, because that's one less team to worry about.
Absolutely, man, especially being AFC North fan. So I dig it. Hey, Baker, go do your thing. Light it up for the Panthers. I could care less about the NFC South. So perfect. So moving on to the bigger news item that we wanted to speak about. We spoke about it a little bit on the last podcast, but obviously the Pac-12 situation is evolving kind of every day. We speculated on the last pod that they could maybe potentially be moving to the Big 12. That is looking more and more likely, but there is a new player in the game that came out today. Apparently, and I'm going to butcher his name, but George Klayavikov.
I know.
Yeah, tough. The commissioner of the Pac-12 is in discussions with the ACC to do a partnership of sorts to air Pac-12 games on the ACC network as well as on ESPN, and then having a somewhat, it's still a little murky, but having kind of a year-end tourney between the top teams in the ACC and the top teams in the Pac-12. I have to assume that talking point was more basketball related, but I think they were also saying having some games between the ACC and the Pac-12 for football as well, just kind of sprinkled in the schedule. Don't know how that's going to work, because I know scheduling happens decade before, but beggars can't be choosers. For my money, I wouldn't want to see that happen. It's just a really weird situation to try to partner with another conference and use their buying power with their own TV market. Just a really kind of a raw deal. I'm much more on the bandwagon of just, packing up everything and moving to the Big 12. Even though that seemed like a dying conference a few months ago, I think it's a better option than just being buddy-buddy with the ACC.
So this is really tough, right? To me, obviously, so I'm just going to take it out of reality a bit and just kind of ask, what do you think would be more fun? Because, right, obviously the more practical, logical move just feels like, right, PAC joins the Big 12. There's a lot of, still with Arizona maybe being that connective tissue between Texas and California and some of the schools in the Northwest. There's a more natural regional thing that happens there. So obviously that makes more just simple sense. But none of this makes sense anymore.
Yeah.
So throw that out the window. In terms of the money, Pac-12 is probably going to blow it. Whatever offers them the least money, the least viewership, and is the worst option, I'm sure that's what they'll choose.
The Mountain West.
We've gone beyond. Yeah, we've gone beyond. Now we have we've gone from Larry Scott to and again, I don't know. I can't say this guy's name either, which I feel terrible about. But it's not gone well, no matter who's been in charge. So from just a purely entertainment standpoint, from a basketball and football centric perspective, would you rather see, and I guess I don't know, Washington and the Oregon schools seem to be in a different conversation than maybe some of the the four
Yeah.
corner schools, the Colorado, Utah, Arizona. So, but would you rather see, the Arizona schools playing in Miami, Florida State, Clemson? Or would you rather see them Texas Tech, Kansas, Baylor? I mean, I guess just like from a purely speculative, fun, like, I don't know, what's more fun to you? Or, if in a perfect world, I guess, how would you even see it play out? Because I think that's where we're at. Like, I don't think it really matters. It's beyond us. I have no idea what's going to happen other than I'm sure that they'll screw it up. Like, what would be more fun to you? I kind of just like think the ACC is so wild and so stupid that I kind of prefer it at this point. I'm like, maybe I'd like that. I don't know. Maybe just like, let's just send the Cats to Miami. And, that's a better trip than going to Texas Tech.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like Uncle Luke being at a Miami game against Arizona would be really cool. And Two Live Crew bumping in the stands, I would be all for that. But my counterpoint, I mean, I guess if all stays the same, right? If Clemson, Florida State, and Miami stay in the ACC, I'm fine with it, right? And then you have like a bi-coastal conference where you have like the Atlantic Conference or division, and then you have like the Pacific, division maybe, or something along those lines.
Yeah, Battle of the Oceans.
I'm fine with that if everybody stays where they're at. But what makes you believe that the Miamis, the Clemsons, especially the Florida States, those revenue generating teams are going to stay in the ACC? I guarantee you in 5 years, they will have agreements to join the SEC. I guarantee it. And then we're going to be stuck in a bullshit conference again, and we're going to be looking to move. Whereas I look at, if you join the Big 12, you get to play Kansas, in basketball. You get to play Baylor in basketball. You get to play Houston in basketball, West Virginia. You get to play, I think, in the Big 12 in football. They also have BYU and Cincinnati. There's some really good teams in the Big 12 too that I think have more staying power in staying within their conference instead of jumping ship in a few years. Does that make sense?
It does. No, I think the more natural fit is the Big 12. And I think that, if you're, again, as you mentioned, like kind of the four corner school, the Colorado, Utah, Arizona State, I think the Big 12 is the natural move. It seems like Oregon schools and Washington schools are, they kind of have a different mindset. Like Oregon and Washington in particular, the two bigger brothers, if you will. And sorry, Cougs and Beav fans. But the bigger brothers, if you will, seem to be more interested in still eyeing the bigger prize in the Big Ten and hoping that they can, wait for that offer. But it doesn't sound like that offer is coming today. So that leaves them in a position where they have to do something. Definitely, this just sucks for everyone in college football. And I think we talked about this last time. But I just think this sucks for the simple reason of, when we were talking about the video game, like NCAA football, styles matter. And like, it was cool that when you get Pac-12 after dark, you get the SEC ground and pound in the early afternoon. First thing in the morning, you get Big Ten football, and it's icy and cold and looks miserable. But it's a different brand, a different style, and every one of those things felt different. And and it sounds like we're just all headed to 2 or 3 conferences, and everything starts to look a certain way, and you kind of lose those styles. And if styles make fights and boxing, then the same thing applied to college football, right? So it just generally sucks. But I do think, to your point, I think what makes sense is like they just join the Big 12. I would like it if those Northwest schools just kind of came with, because I think what's left of the Big 12 and what's left of the Pac-12 still makes for something reputable as a conference. I think it'd be a very strong basketball wise. And then to your point, like there's still some good strongholds from the Big 12 and what they've, collected recently in terms of football, and still having Oregon, Washington. And
look at the football teams in the Big 12 still, dude. Like Baylor was awesome last year. Oklahoma State was great last year. Cincinnati was in the playoff, right?
Yeah.
Then West Virginia is typically pretty good. Texas Tech is usually pretty good. TCU, when they had Gary Patterson, was pretty good. And Houston kicked Arizona's ass 2 years ago. So, like, in terms of football, like, I could make the argument that the Big 12 is better than the ACC. Now, granted, the ACC has Clemson.
Yeah,
They're
I agree.
great.
In terms of depth, I mean, it is an argument for sure.
Yeah. So I think what it comes down to is exactly what you're saying, right? It does suck in terms of parity. And I think you made a really, really cool point that I hadn't thought of, is just stylistically, every conference brought something different, right? You and I always have the joke that the Big Ten, you always bet the under. Like,
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, it's great.
Now what do I bet?
Yeah, when SC goes to Penn State, like, what are we going to do, right? Like, I don't know.
I can't bet that game. I have no idea what to think now.
Yeah, no. And then like Pac-12, you always bet the over because there's no defense in the Pac-12. And, SEC, it was just, defense, but you also had some great offense thrown in there too. And then the Big 12 was also kind of a shootout too. And like now you're losing that stylistic, view that you looked forward to every Saturday. And now it's getting murkier. And I think it also just like, it was just cool having regional identities, right? Like the Pac-12 was the West Coast, the SEC was the South, the ACC was the Mid-Atlantic, and now it's just like, hey, here's the Big 12 plus 2 California teams that don't really belong. And I can tell you, I've talked to fans that are Big 10 fans that are not happy that SC and UCLA are coming, not because they're scared of the competition, but just because they think it's a stupid ass idea, that it doesn't make sense. It takes all the legacy out of the conference. It takes all the history out of the conference. And again, kind of how we hit on the stylistic identity, it takes that away too. So it's just a real raw deal for everybody involved. But this is just what the NCAA is. The NCAA has been on the downturn for what seems like 10 years. So I fully expect it. I just hope that, one way or another, the pessimistic outlook that we have for U of A and the Pac-12, like it doesn't come to fruition and they actually do get a good deal somewhere. But I just don't see it happening because we got kind of caught with our pants down with USC and UCLA leaving, and now we're scrambling to make the best of it.
Yeah, it's rough, man. And right, we're just going to sound like old guys complaining about like what's obviously been happening for years and years, right? When we poached 2 more teams in the Pac, hey, it was the Pac-10 when we started, right? It was the Pac-8 before that. My dad would tell me, it was Pac-8 and then we're Pac-10 and then it was Pac-12 and, now we're headed in the other direction. So it is what it is. It's like old guys complaining and apparently we're getting older, but and I guess that's why I look at the ACC. I'm like, well, that just seems like more fun to me. Like if we could have Arizona basketball with Duke and North Carolina, like sign me up for that. I'd love to see that. Not that there's anything wrong with playing Baylor or Kansas either. Those are still fun games and still plenty of good competition. And I think you're just going to see that from a larger conference, right? If you had 6 to 8 teams to whatever pool you're in, you're going to see better competition. Maybe not as frequently, but you're going to see better competition. But I do think from when I think about, would I rather see Pac-12 quote unquote style football played, versus the Big 12 and have to travel to, like, that's the thing. I guess like as a fan, what I loved about the Pac-12 is that I knew if I was going to a road game in any destination, I was still in a coastal basically in a coastal town. And that's great. That's why that's like part of living on the West Coast is you're never more than 6 hours from the beach, right? Like even in Arizona, which you might, certainly we don't have an ocean front, but I'm never more than 6 to 7 hours from the beach. And that's why to me, I'm like, well, just give me Florida and the Carolinas. Then I feel like we kind of have a similar vibe, if you will. So like, that's why it's sort of appealing to me. And if you're just, randomly throwing darts at a board, which is what this feels like if you're not one of the big players, right? You're not USC, you're not Texas, you're not Oklahoma. Somehow UCLA lucked into this. Obviously, they have a nice basketball tradition, but as a fan of an Arizona team, you're just like, where are we getting dragged to? And tell me it's good.
Well, here's something to consider too, John. I just thought about what you're talking is like, if North Carolina football has to travel to Tucson and play a game at 9:30 and nobody watches it for one side of the entire competition because they're all in bed by 12:30. Is that even good for the ACC? Like, no. Right. So like, I really, really do not understand us flirting with the ACC. It just does not make sense to me. And it just feels like you're grabbing at straws.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, right? So, and you know, when you start talking about time zones, it's really starting to make sense. You know, as soon as you bring in clock math, you know it's a sexy marriage. So,
Yeah, dude. I can tell you
it,
this much. U of A students are not going to wake up after a night of partying on a Friday night, wake up on a Saturday morning at 8:30 to watch us play freaking, Syracuse because they kick off at 11:30 their time. It's not going to happen. So it doesn't make sense for either side.
no, it's tough, right? If you're what I feel bad for is any Pac-12 school that feels they have any sort of momentum in any sort of way, which I think the University of Arizona does have some great momentum in their athletic department, right? And if you're not an Arizona fan, obviously you don't care, but if you are, then you do. It's tough because you have a ton of momentum in basketball. You have the best recruiting class you've ever had in football, and now you have no idea what your destiny is, and even in terms of who you'll be playing, where you play, what conference you align to, and every story you've been telling to student athletes is a completely different one, and it probably changes day by day, and they're probably looking at Twitter or wherever they get their news the same way we are to say, I don't even know what we belong to anymore. And I think no matter where you are in the college landscape, you're disappointed because now the games you play are different. Unless you're just a real eclectic sports fan, you probably want the old rivalries. You probably want that same old thing that your parents grew up on, that you were raised on, and that's what you want to see. And it's just a weird thing and a bummer, man. Like I could talk about it forever, but it's honestly just it's mostly just me complaining, which I don't know if anybody wants to hear that.
Yeah, you make a really good point before we end the show, but I wonder how this is affecting recruiting now that this just happened, because LA is such a hotbed for recruiting for everybody else in the Pac-12 besides the two LA teams, that I'm sure that part of the pitch beforehand was like, hey, stay in the Pac-12, come to Washington, come to Arizona, and you'll get to play in front of your family at least once or twice a year. Now they can't say that. And I wonder if that's going to impact recruiting the next couple of years, because LA is such an enormous hotbed for talent.
Exactly. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, that is what it is. And that's a huge story to tell. And that's where, the Big 12 probably makes more sense because, then if you're some of these other schools and you're saying, hey, to travel from Texas to California or California to Texas, like that makes some sense. If you're talking about Arizona to Florida, Florida to Arizona, or one of the Carolinas, to Washington or whatever it may be, that's obviously a very different ask. So,
yeah.
But, we know money wins. Like that's not something that we're breaking news on. Money wins out. Follow the money. That's where the decisions will end up being. But, I honestly just hope that part's true because the Pac-12 is the only one that seems to be money averse. So I'm hoping at minimum, they at least do that part right, even if it guts the core and the integrity of what the Pac-12 was. At least maybe what it is can be something that's financially fruitful and keeps a strong athletic department for all the sports. Like that's what's tough too, is like, you think of Arizona football and no one really thinks about Arizona football, but we do. I mean, it's still a D1 program and you play big games and you can get to bowls. Basketball obviously is a huge winner, but like where the real loss comes from if those things aren't strong is that, it's a strong baseball program. It's a good swimming program. It's all these other ancillary programs that if they don't have the money, all those things are going to suffer. And that sucks too, because
and that's the whole
all those,
That's the whole Pac-12 too.
Yeah,
like your Stanfords, your Oregon States, all those teams are going to struggle now. And those are, especially like you said, college baseball, dude, like those are a huge, huge crux of, the College World Series. It seems like every year one of those teams is usually in the thick of it. So if the Pac-12 gets dissolved and those teams are left scrambling, that's a bad look for NCAA.
Yeah. It's all bad, man. It's all bad. We're getting old and everything's falling apart. We'll just recreate the conferences. We'll just play NCAA 14 where everything's fine.
Nostalgia, baby. Straight into the veins. I agree.
Right, that's right. That's right.
How is this going to impact the new NCAA football game, by the way? That is what I need to find out, because that game's coming out next summer. So just to bring it full circle here, that's what is top of my mind, right? I need to know where Arizona is going to be conference aligned so I can just rip it up when I get the new NCAA football.
Yeah, those guys have got to be scrambling too. I mean, it's affecting their lives just as much as it's hitting home for us, you know? Yeah. So people are being displaced, man. This is not cool.
No.
This is unacceptable. Someone needs to, is Mark Emmert still out there?
What
Someone
a
needs
tragedy.
to pay for this.
Yeah, so somebody needs to get in front of some hot mics and explain themselves, okay? Perfect.
NCAA, do you still exist? Answer to this.
I'm glad we were able to bring it full circle here at the end. Hey, you know, if we missed anything or if you guys think we were a little wrong on our opinions, please hit us up on socials. We are available on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We have the website out there as well. So please interact with us. Please like, subscribe, comment. Please leave a rating. It helps us out tremendously, just reaching a broader audience. But please, do us those favors and do all those things. We would greatly appreciate it. Other than that, we will have an episode for you next week after John returns back from his Vegas trip and has a few days to rest up and sober up. Because I know he's about to have just an incredible time out in Sin City. So if you hear any hot tips on conference realignment, John, or if you run into some summer league players, please hit us up and we can jump on a pod or something, a little micro pod, and get some information out to these folks.
Yeah, Brent Musburger, if you're out there, anybody in the KD camp, if you're out there, I will be looking for you. I will be trying to track you down. I will be trying to get, to catch a beat and make a buck. We got to throw it at some ad dollars or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Get us out there.
That's
but yeah,
right.
Please like, subscribe, interact with us. Anything you can do to help us out. Honestly, it's just more fun to talk with you guys, anyways. And hey, maybe you can bring something to the table. We're obviously giving out shout outs like candy. So you want to be on the show? All you have to do is literally text me, tweet at me, interact with our Instagram, and you've made the show. I mean, that's how simple it is.
That's right.
We're pretty cheap.
Perfect. Well, hey, John, I hope you have an incredible trip. Hopefully we'll have some news here on the Pac-12 front or the KD front, and we'll have a really awesome show for you guys next week. Other than that, I hope everybody has a good and safe weekend, and talk to you soon. Bye.